Most people talk too much. They talk because they're uncomfortable with silence. They talk because they're desperate to be liked, to be understood, to be heard. They talk because they're afraid of being forgotten. But silence, intentional silence, is not weakness. It's not awkwardness, it's a weapon. When you speak less, people lean in. They wonder what you're thinking. They second-guess themselves. They start to feel your presence without you needing to perform. That's power. The loudest person in the room is almost never the most powerful. They're just the most insecure. They fill every moment with noise because they can't handle what happens when they stop talking. Because that's when people see them for what they are. Unstable, undisciplined, easy to read, easy to rattle. Now think of the opposite. Think of the people who make you nervous without ever raising their voice. The ones who sit still, who barely speak, but when they do, it cuts right through you. They don't need to say much, because they've trained themselves to speak only when it matters. And that's the kind of presence most people don't know how to handle, because they're used to noise. They're used to people oversharing, over-explaining, constantly apologizing for existing. You don't have to live that way. Speaking less is not about being cold. It's about being intentional. It means your words are clean, sharp, measured. And when you do speak, people listen, because they know you're not just talking to fill space. You're choosing your moment. This is where real power begins, not with aggression, not with volume, but with restraint. In martial arts, the most dangerous fighters are often the calmest. They don't waste movement, they don't posture. They wait, watch, and strike only when it's time. That same principle applies to how you move through the world. You don't need to dominate every conversation. You don't need to prove how smart or interesting you are. You just need to know when to shut up. Because silence does something most people overlook. It makes people reflect on themselves. When you don't react, they fill in the silence with their own projections, their own fears, their own insecurities. They start thinking things like, did I say something wrong? Why didn't he laugh at my joke? What is she thinking right now? They do the work for you. They become self-conscious while you stay composed. That's control. People reveal themselves when they're nervous. And nothing makes people more nervous than someone who doesn't need to speak. This is psychological leverage. And it works in conversations, in relationships, in business, even in conflict. The one who speaks less usually has the upper hand. Not because they know everything, but because they don't feel the need to prove anything. And that's rare. Most people live on emotional autopilot. They react instantly. They blurt out every thought. They can't handle a pause, a delay, a moment of ambiguity. But if you can sit with silence, hold tension, and choose your words slowly, you become untouchable. Because silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of discipline. And in a world that's constantly yelling for attention, discipline stands out. Now let's be clear. This doesn't mean never speaking, it means understanding the weight of your words. It means knowing that silence isn't empty, it's strategic. Every time you don't respond to a provocation, you're training yourself. Every time you listen instead of speak, you're gathering information. And every time you delay your reaction, you're building internal control. People confuse power with force, but the real kind, the kind that doesn't fade when you leave the room, comes from silence, patience, and clarity. So practice speaking less, not out of fear, not out of social anxiety, but out of strength. Say only what needs to be said, and let your silence do the rest, because power isn't always loud. And the most dangerous people in the world are often the quietest ones in the room. The most powerful people in the world don't always walk into a room and demand attention. Sometimes they don't walk into the room at all, and still everyone talks about them. Still everyone adjusts their behavior like they're being watched. Still their presence lingers without ever physically being there. That's strategic invisibility. It's the ability to shape what happens in your absence, to create tension without saying a word, to move pieces on the board without being seen near the table. And the people who master this rarely chase visibility, because they understand something most people never learn. If you're constantly in the spotlight, you're easier to predict. And if you're easy to predict, you're easy to control. That's why the loudest person often burns out the fastest. They reveal all their motives, all their emotions, all their weak points. They leave nothing to the imagination. But invisibility, Intentional invisibility is different. It doesn't mean you're passive. It doesn't mean you fade into the background and let life pass you by. It means you move differently, quietly, carefully, with long-term leverage in mind. You don't chase recognition. You let your absence create the tension. Think about it. When someone powerful stops showing up, people notice. They start wondering where you are. They start speculating about what you're planning. They start feeling the shift in the room. That's how you know you've built presence the right way. Not by being everywhere, but by being missed. Strategic invisibility requires patience. It requires you to pull back when your ego wants to jump in. It requires you to resist the urge to explain yourself, defend yourself, or show your face just to be seen. Because most of the time, the strongest move is no move. Silence is uncomfortable for people. Absence is even worse. When you go quiet, others start overthinking. When you step back, others start second-guessing. And while they're doing all that, you're watching, you're planning, you're building strength in the dark. This is how you keep control without wasting energy. Because real control isn't about dominating every conversation. It's about shaping the environment so people anticipate your next move without ever seeing you coming. There's a psychological trick at play here. It's called the Zeigarnik effect. People remember unfinished stories more than completed ones. When you speak, then suddenly go quiet. When you're involved, then disappear. People feel the tension of the unfinished. They wonder, why did he go silent? Is she planning something? Did I do something wrong? That uncertainty becomes your leverage. Because people fill in the blanks with their own fears, and you didn't have to say a word. But this only works if you've already built a reputation for being sharp, unpredictable, or dangerous. Strategic invisibility doesn't work for people who were never seen as powerful in the first place. So the move is this. First, build the aura, then withdraw. Speak with impact, then say nothing. Show your strength, then vanish. Make waves, then disappear before the splash hits the shore. And when you come back colder, clearer, stronger. People will feel it. Because invisibility isn't just about being gone. It's about returning at the right moment, not sooner, not louder, just smarter. Here's the key. If people know everything about you, they can use it against you. But if they only know fragments, they're always off balance. Keep them guessing. Don't announce your every thought. Don't share every feeling. Don't explain every decision. Be the kind of person who says less, disappears often, and lets others wonder. It gives you freedom. Because when you're not always visible, you can't be easily manipulated. You can't be targeted. You can't be easily read. In a world where everyone is performing, posting, broadcasting their lives in real time, the one who holds back becomes mysterious. And mystery is power. Mystery makes people curious. Curiosity leads to obsession, and obsession gives you control. So here's the strategy. If you're in a meeting, speak once, clearly, directly, and then go silent. Let your one comment hang in the air. Let others respond. You don't need to speak twice. You've already shifted the tone. If you're in a group, don't be the center of attention. Be the one watching from the corner. Say little. Notice everything. People will start wondering what you're thinking, and that wonder becomes respect. In relationships, pull back when it's too easy. If someone is taking your presence for granted, remove it. Don't argue. Don't explain. Let your absence speak. In every space you enter, your greatest leverage isn't your visibility. It's your ability to vanish on purpose. Because when you're invisible, you're unpredictable. When you're unpredictable, you're dangerous. And when you're dangerous, people treat you differently. You don't need to dominate the room. Just know how to control the energy of it without ever being seen. That's strategic invisibility. It's not a trick. It's a discipline. And in the long run, it builds the kind of power that doesn't fade when the spotlight moves on. So learn to disappear, not out of fear, not to hide, but to regain control. Control of your time, control of your mind, control of your influence. Because the one who speaks less can disappear. And the one who disappears can control the room without ever stepping inside it. There's something deeply unsettling about silence, especially when it comes from someone who's usually sharp. When a loud person goes quiet, people get confused. But when a quiet person stays silent, people get nervous. And that nervousness is power. Silence is one of the most underrated psychological tools in the world. So it's not just the absence of words, it's pressure, it's suspense. It's the weight of the unknown building up second by second. Most people can't handle silence. They fill it with noise, they ramble, they explain, they confess. Not because they need to, but because they're uncomfortable. And that's where you gain the upper hand. See, the person who breaks first in silence loses. They expose their insecurities, they reveal their intentions, they show their need for approval. But the one who holds the silence, they control the pace, they control the frame. They force everyone else to play their game. Because silence feels like judgment. It feels like surveillance. It feels like a test that the other person doesn't know how to pass. And that discomfort makes people impulsive. They start justifying themselves. They start making offers they wouldn't normally make. They talk too much, reveal too much, promise too much. They start leaking information just to get rid of the tension. All while you say nothing. This isn't about being passive-aggressive or weirdly stoic for no reason. It's about learning the art of controlled stillness, especially in high-pressure situations. Let's break it down. In conversations, silence can flip the power dynamic instantly. Ask a question. Wait. Let the other person scramble to fill the void. They'll usually give you more than they meant to. In negotiations, make your offer, then shut up. Let the silence sit heavy in the room. Most people can't handle it. They'll speak too soon, backpedal, or lower their side of the deal, just to kill the awkwardness. In arguments, don't rush to respond. Let their words echo. Watch them backtrack. Watch them panic when you don't react the way they expected. People are addicted to feedback. They expect a nod, a smile, a frown, a comeback. When they get nothing, they start projecting. They imagine what you're thinking, and they usually assume the worst. That assumption, that fear of being judged, misunderstood, or disliked, it eats away at their confidence. Meanwhile, you haven't said a word. This is psychological warfare, subtle, quiet, effective. And it doesn't just affect individuals. It shapes entire environments. Walk into a room and say little. Speak only when necessary. Make your silence louder than everyone else's noise. Over time, people begin to interpret your quiet as depth, as strength, as mystery. They start thinking, what does he know that we don't? Why isn't she reacting like everyone else? Is he planning something? Is she judging us? Their imagination becomes your megaphone. Because silence is never just silence. It becomes a canvas that other people paint with their own fears. And those fears make them easier to read, easier to steer, easier to dominate, without ever raising your voice. But let's get real. This only works when your silence is intentional. You can't just be quiet and hope people respect you. Silence without presence is just background noise. But silence with presence? That's different. That's when people feel you even when you're not talking. That's when your eyes say more than your mouth ever could. That's when your stillness becomes the most aggressive move in the room. You don't flinch. You don't chase approval. You don't rush to explain yourself to people who don't deserve an explanation. That's when silence becomes dominance. And this doesn't just apply to rooms filled with people. It applies to relationships. It applies to reputation. It applies to how you live your entire life. Because silence is also the refusal to play someone else's game. When people bait you with drama, stay silent. When people disrespect you, don't argue, just walk away. When they try to provoke you, don't respond. Let them exhaust themselves. Your silence says, you're not worth my energy. And that hits harder than anything you could have said. It leaves them confused, frustrated, questioning their own power. Because when someone refuses to react, it forces everyone around them to reflect. Now here's where this gets deeper. Silence isn't just something you use on others. It's something you use on yourself. It creates space. It gives you distance from your emotions. It gives you time to respond instead of react. You start noticing the thoughts that run your life. You start seeing the patterns that trap other people. You learn to observe instead of obsess. Most people talk themselves into weakness. They overthink, they doubt. They explain their own limitations out loud, and then wonder why no one takes them seriously. But if you sit with your own silence long enough, you start to hear the truth underneath all that noise. You start seeing clearly. And when you do speak, you speak with force, not volume, not anger, just clarity. Because silence trains your mind to be precise. It sharpens your words. It makes your presence feel heavier. It turns every sentence into something that matters. That's why the most powerful people are never the most talkative. They speak when they want to, not when they feel pressured to. They know silence isn't weakness. It's the weapon most people are too scared to use. So next time you feel the urge to fill the air, don't. Next time someone tests you, pause. Next time a room gets loud, stay quiet. Watch what happens. Watch how people start reaching, guessing, unraveling, just to make sense of your calm. And while they do that, you stay composed. You stay unreadable. You stay dangerous. Because the scariest person in the room isn't the one yelling, it's the one who's watching, saying nothing, and still has everyone's attention. That's the power of silence. Not passive, not weak, not shy, but focused, patient, and completely in control. There's a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it just waits. And when it moves with precision. That strength is patience. Most people think power comes from taking action, fast, jump on opportunities, react quickly, say something, do something, fix it now. But the truth is that need to act quickly is often just fear in disguise. Fear of missing out, fear of looking weak, fear of not being in control. Real power doesn't flinch like that. Real power doesn't chase. Because the most dominant people don't act out of pressure. They act out of choice. And that choice often looks like waiting. Not because they're lazy, not because they're indecisive, but because they know something everyone else forgets. Time is leverage. See, when you're patient, you let things unfold, you let people show you who they really are. You let the lies fall apart on their own. You let the loud ones burn themselves out trying to prove something. And while everyone's busy scrambling to get attention, to win arguments, to make noise, you're watching, you're listening. You're waiting for the exact moment to strike. And when that moment comes, you're already prepared. This isn't passivity, it's strategic delay, it's restraint. The ability to hold back when everyone else is rushing forward, that's domination. Because most people can't wait. Their ego won't let them. They feel disrespected, so they respond instantly. They feel threatened, so they talk back. They feel left out, so they overextend. All of it. Reactive, emotional, sloppy. But the patient person, they feel all of that and still don't move. They sit with it. They hold it. They let the storm pass. And then when they finally speak or act, it lands. That's why the most feared people in any room aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who wait. Wait to speak. Wait to move. Wait for the perfect opening. And then go all in. It's the same in war. It's the same in chess. It's the same in life. Every strong position is built on delayed gratification. You want respect? Don't demand it. Build it over time. You want results. Don't chase them. Plant seeds and let them grow. You want power? Don't rush into rooms begging for it. Be so patient and calculated that it starts moving toward you. But patience isn't just external. It's internal too. It's not just about waiting for other people. It's about waiting out your own impulses. That voice in your head that says, do it now, prove them wrong, show them who you are, ignore it. Because when you react, they control you. When you wait, you control yourself. That's real discipline. And discipline is rare. Think about it. We live in a world addicted to immediacy. Fast food, fast replies, fast success. Everyone wants the reward, and they want it right now. But the person who delays, the one who invests in silence, in stillness, in time, they stand out. They become unpredictable, unshakable, dangerous, because nobody knows what they're planning. Nobody knows when they'll act. Nobody knows what's coming next. That unpredictability, that's power too, because it forces everyone else to move around you. Let them panic, let them rush, let them make mistakes trying to read you. Meanwhile, you wait. You wait until you're so calm, so patient, that your timing becomes deadly. And this applies everywhere. In relationships, don't chase. Let people show you how much they value you by what they do when you don't respond right away. In business, don't beg. Let deals come to you by creating something so solid that people feel lucky just to be involved. In conflict, don't explode. Stay composed. Watch how your patience eats away at the other person's ego while you say almost nothing. Because nothing says I'm in control like not reacting when someone expects you to. Now here's where it gets even deeper. Patience isn't just a tactic, it's a philosophy. It's the belief that your life doesn't need to happen all at once. That power isn't about constant movement, but precise movement. It's trusting your process. Trusting that what's meant for you doesn't need to be forced. And the less you force things, the more naturally they fall into place, because desperation leaks. It makes you act out of fear. It makes you settle. It makes you accept less than you deserve. But patience. Patience makes people wonder what you know that they don't. It makes them come to you. It makes them rethink their position. It makes them adjust, just to keep your attention. So be the person who waits, the one who pauses, the one who doesn't chase every distraction, the one who plays the long game when everyone else is looking for shortcuts. Because the truth is, power isn't always about speed. It's about timing, it's about control. And the more you master your timing, the more the world bends around your movements. So next time you're tempted to react, don't. Next time you feel the pull to rush, pause. Next time you get tested, smile, breathe, and wait. Because while they're playing checkers at full speed, you're playing chess in silence. And your checkmate, it's already in motion. You're just patient enough to wait for it. There's a shift that happens when you stop trying to prove yourself. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. But once it clicks, something changes in the way you walk, speak, carry yourself. You no longer need to be seen. You don't chase validation. You don't need people to understand you, like you, approve of you. You just move in silence. And when you do speak, it's on your terms. That's the final form of power, not dominance through intimidation, not control through manipulation, but quiet certainty. You become the kind of person who doesn't explain much. You just live. And that alone creates a presence most people can't ignore. Because here's the thing, people can feel it. They can feel when you're not trying to impress them. They can feel when your energy doesn't need attention, and they start watching you differently. Not because you're flashy, but because you're stable, unbothered, grounded. You're not performing. You're not selling a version of yourself. You're not constantly proving you're smart or strong or important. You just are. And that's terrifying to people who rely on performance for identity. When someone is deeply insecure, they operate from one place: external validation. They want to be noticed. They want to be liked. They want to be acknowledged for something. But when you've done the inner work, you don't care if they notice. You're not in the room to be liked. You're in the room because you belong there, and if they don't get it, that's fine. You don't need them to. This is what makes you a silent threat. Because you're no longer playing the game of approval. You're not throwing bait. You're not explaining your intentions. You're not justifying your decisions. You move with purpose, not explanation. And that's unsettling, because people can't argue with someone who's not trying to convince them. They can't manipulate someone who doesn't need anything from them. They can't predict someone who doesn't overshare. The less you say, the more they wonder. The more you observe, the more they reveal. And the more detached you are, the more power you hold. It's ironic. The quieter you get, the louder your presence becomes. The less you speak, the more they listen when you do. But here's the key: you can't fake this. You can't pretend to be silent and detached, just to look cool or intimidating. That's still performance. That's still rooted in insecurity. This kind of silence comes from work, from discomfort, from sitting in your own thoughts long enough to stop fearing them, from no longer needing to argue, defend, or explain. Because you know who you are. And that knowing is louder than any speech. It's not arrogance, it's not coldness, it's clarity. When you're clear on your value, you don't need applause. When you're clear on your path, you don't need directions. When you're clear on your principles, you don't need to be understood, you just move. And when you move like that, people respond differently. Some will be drawn to it, they'll want to be near it. They'll admire your calm. They'll see strength in your restraint. Others will feel threatened, because your silence reminds them of their noise. Your calm reminds them of their chaos. Your detachment reminds them how dependent they are on attention. That's not your problem. You don't exist to manage other people's insecurity. Your presence alone, when you're no longer trying to prove yourself, forces people to confront their own doubts. And that's why silence can be a threat. Because it mirrors everything the other person isn't willing to face. It says, I don't need you to validate me. It says, I'm not performing for you. It says, I don't care if you misunderstand me because I understand myself. That's real power. The ability to walk into a room and not shrink, not perform, not exaggerate. Just be. And let everything else adjust to your energy. So, How do you get there? You stop chasing reputation. You stop needing a response to every move you make. You stop building your identity around other people's reactions, and instead you focus inward. You build discipline, you cultivate patience, you detach from outcomes. You do things because they're right for you, not because they'll get likes or praise or claps. You sit in solitude, you reflect, you become okay with not being understood. And the longer you do that, the more you realize you don't need the world to know your value for it to be real. You don't need a label, a title, or a spotlight. You just need alignment with your principles, your purpose, your direction. And when that happens, silence becomes your superpower. Not because you're hiding anything, but because you've got nothing left to prove. You don't explain your moves. You make them. You don't announce your growth. You show it, without saying a word. You don't fight for recognition. You walk in full awareness that you don't need it. And that's when people start watching, because deep down everyone's tired of pretending, tired of noise, tired of performance. And when they see someone who's not pretending, it shakes them. So be that person, be the quiet one, be the grounded one, be the one who doesn't need to shout, because your energy speaks for you. And if this message hit home for you, if it made you pause, reflect, or feel understood, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're at in your journey. Tell me what you're working on. Tell me what hit hardest. Subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Long-form, real and thought-provoking. Not hype, not fluff, just grounded wisdom. And if there's someone in your life who needs to hear this, someone who's tired of proving, tired of noise, send this to them. Share it. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people who move in silence and know their worth. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Stay patient, stay grounded. And never forget, your silence is louder than you think.